I'd like to call this June meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board to order. Could I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, everybody. If you could silence your cell phones, that would be great. The first item on the agenda in subdivision review is Beach Plum Meadows LLC. A couple of issues regarding this application. The first being the receipt from the board's consultant, Mr. Patrick Cleary, regarding the preliminary subdivision plat, which we have received. And Mr. Cleary, if you would be willing to go through your report and highlight any discrepancies or issues as you see them.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant submitted the preliminary subdivision plat based on the sketch plan that
The
you
files.
reviewed previously.
Just, you can keep that, just don't write it.
Subdivision plat has some issues that require the attention of the applicant,
Should
notably the provision of some utility information, lighting and so forth on the property. But the plan that was submitted demonstrates zoning compliance. There are some issues that the board needs to be aware of, that the board was made aware of during the sketch plan review process, which was the project's requested waivers on certain subdivision standards regarding roadway geometry. For example, the roadway bend at the rear of the proposed road, the applicant submitted documentation demonstrating that that would comply with the fire department's requirements. That's part of your record, but that is a waiver that you would have to adopt prior to the approval of the plan. There are a host of, not a host, but there are several issues that require the applicant to attend to. Notably, the provision of utilities and clarification of landscaping and some of the street trees on the plan. There's a requirement in your code for the submission of a stormwater pollution prevention plan, a SWIP, and that plan is required prior to final approval. And in conversations with Aldo, it would be preferable if that document were to be submitted sooner rather than later in the process, so that all of the issues of concern can be addressed prior to final approval, and there's sufficient time to address that as well. There's also an issue with respect to the parkland set aside in this property, which we have discussed previously, and that relates to whether there is a park provided on site or whether or not there's a fee in lieu provided. The applicant has identified areas on the plat that you may have noticed which are identified as park open space. In theory, they amount in total to the square footage that would be required to meet the code. However, that land has to be useful and provide open space that's practical. The areas that are provided on this site are kind of isolated, they're not that accessible, and you would have to make a decision as to whether or not that's suitable for the provision of public park space. This is space that has to be publicly accessible, not limited to the residents of this subdivision alone. Absent that, you have the right to require the payment of a fee in lieu based on the code's requirements. So that's another decision your board would have to make prior to the consideration of final approval. The big issue that we discussed, and we have been discussing on this application throughout, is the provision of its sewage treatment methodology. And as you know, the applicant had proposed a chromoglass system to address that requirement. Both Aldo and I had an opportunity to meet with the health department about 2 weeks ago, along with the applicant's representatives. And that's the second time I've met with the health department. First time Aldo had the opportunity to be there. And the takeaway of that meeting is that's a technology that the health department has approved in this county some 40 times in the past. They have experience using it. And it is their opinion that if done properly, if constructed properly, if installed and maintained properly, will meet the requirements that must be met to address a subdivision of this type. That system has been questioned by some people in its suitability, its applicability, and whether or not it's really effective. And part of that meeting was discussing options. And from what we've learned from the health department is that there are alternative methodologies and techniques that could be employed. And the applicant was very forthcoming in agreeing to consider alternatives should the board come to a position where an alternative is warranted. So what Aldo has done is requested years' worth of data of the ChromaGlass system so that Aldo can make an independent judgment as to whether or not that system is going to be suitable or not. So that information has not yet been received by us. Has been requested. The health department was very forthcoming in their willingness to provide it, but we haven't seen it yet. So once we see that, we'll be able to give you some more opinions regarding the suitability of that system or not. But again, it's important to emphasize that the applicant has been willing to consider alternative methods if the ChromaGlass system is found not to be suitable in your decision. So where we are in this project is they have submitted the application. There are some of these informational bits and pieces that need to be provided. And if that's provided, we are in a position where you can schedule a public hearing on this so we can continue to get public input and move the project along the process.
Thank you. Great memo.
I had a couple of questions, if I could ask. One being, you note with regard to the off-street parking,
Right.
it depends on how many bedrooms are proposed, and that's not specified. You note that the number of bedrooms, if 4 or more bedrooms are proposed, a third parking space would be required. Is that physically possible?
So right now, the sketch shows a theoretical home footprint and a driveway to a garage. It's not a detailed site plan, but for each of those homes, if there were a 4th bedroom, you'd have to see a detailed site plan to see if another parking space could be provided on the site. Theoretically, these are half-acre sites. It's the provision of another parking space would be possible, but if it were required, they'd have to show it to you. So it's a fair question, and I think the applicant should think about that.
You also note regarding the abandonment of the Old Millstone Brook Road and Guilfoyle Street,
Right.
that everything is dependent upon that. And you note if the paper streets remain in place after the filing of the subdivision, a number of zoning compliance issues would arise. Where are we with that issue?
So I think the applicant may be able to give us an update on that. I think that has progressed more rapidly than we had anticipated, so the applicant may be able to give you an update on that this evening.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Bob,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is this board charged with making the, I'll call it the ChromaGlass decision? It's our judgment that it's adequate, or is that a request of the water authority that they believe it's adequate if we approve? I'm interested in where does the burden lie?
Ultimately, the burden is on the health department,
Okay.
but you have the right to have input, and this
Well,
board
I
would
know
have
we
the
got
right.
the
In
input, I
other
just
words, if
wanted-
you disagreed with that, or you felt something was not satisfactory, you would have the right to communicate with the health department your opinion.
But can we assume in terms of the burdens that our advisor, who's obviously in charge of doing this and communicating with us, if we accept his input and what Aldo says and everything, we can rely on that being okay with the water authority? As Pam told me the other day, the water authority really is, it's their area.
Yeah,
This is an area that's right where they have wells and everything else.
well,
That's
apparently.
fine. If they're happy, I just want to know where's the
I can speak
burden?
to that one issue, Bo.
Sure.
So the water, there's a well drawdown area on the other side of the tracks, very near this property. And one of the things we did with the health department is the health department verified that the location of the overflow from this treatment plant is outside of those drawdown areas. There's a small area right in the middle of this site that's suitable. So we were able to confirm that with the health department, that it would meet the water department's requirements.
So that's been done because
It has.
this area has the railroad tracks, and I think everything on the other side of the railroad tracks lies with the town,
That's right.
not the village. But what's above it with the town is what I call the Tuckahoe Drain. I accidentally learned about that the hard way because I live at the bottom of the Tuckahoe Drain. And it's a real issue, and they're going to develop that area. I believe our council owns property that's up in that area. This actually, where the line is above the tracks that's in the village.
Are we close to the rim of the drain or just in the drain?
I don't know. But that whole area coming down, it really is the drainage that forms Petty Creek.
Yeah. The good thing.
And it's
about-
not trivial, the whole thing, it goes under the tracks.
The good thing about the health department's position with respect to
Yeah.
that, it didn't address the municipal boundaries. It was a resource
Okay.
around that well
So we
field.
can,
And
we can ignore
were
that
able to
other,
look at the-
that
at
other
the
stuff is
graphics.
another case then. So in
Different
terms of
issue.
the water supply for everybody up there,
Right.
they're happy.
That this facility will be outside of that regulated area,
And the
just
cro-
outside,
And,
but
the-
outside.
and the chromoglass makes it okay, because I mean,
That's-
I told Waldo, I remember Union Carbide,
Question,
other
Mr.
issues.
Chairman.
The water out here and all that is, it's proved
don't
not
think
to
he
be
heard
trivial,
me,
so we
so-
want to do it right.
He's
As
still talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
long
So
as we're doing it right, it's fine with me.
It doesn't
the
hear.
health department has laid out the process by which it can be done right. There
Okay.
are 100 steps that must go into place before
I
it is
understand.
confirmed to be done right. So
Okay.
it is a fairly complex process.
Yep.
But the entity in charge, Suffolk County Health Department, has said if it's done this way, we would accept it and we would approve it.
Thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, on the subject of density, it's my understanding, finally, that we have 10 acres here, and it's a half acre, and 10 acres and a half, there ought to be 20 home sites there. We have 18 home sites.
16.
16, thank you. Can you just correct me on the numbers? And please, and this is also without the sewage treatment plant, you would be in a septic system.
Right.
Most common in the area, most tested. And the difference in those circumstances, we wouldn't have 16, we'd have 10 lots.
Maybe fewer.
So for the extra 6 lots, we're finding that the developer is perfectly acceptable to install a sewage treatment system, which, you know, if you look it up in the internet and the uncertainties and the work to be done by Aldo would be a major interest to me in saying to the developer, well, why 16 when you can have 10 and have a system that you don't have to worry about for 1 minute, you don't have to check it, you don't have to go across the street where the system exists and is currently running, or elsewhere in the community to find out how this thing really works. And I mean, it's such a big if. I guess if that's what the developer wants to risk, that's his problem.
And it's his expense,
But-
too.
It's also a problem for the planning board up to a certain point where we're hoping that when this thing is installed and it's done, and we can look back 5 years and say, what a great job we did. Like, say, Old Town. But here, we have this iffy situation with the most important single event on that lot is the sanitary system. So,
Do you know if 10 homes were built and regular septic systems were installed, do you know what the difference in nitrates in the ground would be compared to if they put 16 homes and put the sewage treatment system in?
Again, it was very helpful to have Aldo with the health department because he posed that question to the health department when we were there. And their response was difficult to say, but theoretically, the chromoglass system can reduce the levels below those septic systems. So that's why we're trying to get more information, so the proof's in the pudding, so we can actually document those things. But it's an interesting conversation, there's no question about it. And I agree with Warren, it's the most critical element involving the development of the property.
On that issue.
Mr. Flanagan, I'm sure you've got some things to say.
Yeah, thank you. There were a couple of questions that you asked, and I think I can answer those, and I'll go.
Stand by the
work in reverse.
microphone, Gil.
Thank you. I'll answer your questions, and then I'll go in reverse order, if that's
Mr.
okay.
Chairman,
Fine.
Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Flanagan, I want to let you know that the entire board attended the information and the scholastic presentation by the County Village Association last 2 weeks ago, which was very informative. We had spent 2 hours with 2 lawyers and another 2 hours with 1 lawyer and an engineer, landscape engineer. And it was interesting to see what they had to say, which I'm not going to go into now because that's not the point. Our attorney also attended that meeting. So we feel up to speed, I think.
That's a good thing.
That includes me, I went there too.
Okay. I'm glad somebody's up to speed anyway. Let me just answer a couple of Mr. Stevenson's comments about the abandonment. You asked about that. We already have extensive work being done by a title company. Obviously, we wouldn't want to implement that now when we're still in the process, but obviously before or at the time of final approval, we would have to have that. Otherwise, this map wouldn't work. So that would be a condition of final approval.
Will that require the approval of the people who live there?
Those who front on it, yes.
Is that lined up?
And my client has spoken with them, and I believe that is. At least that's my understanding. As I say, we're doing some title work on it. It appears that a part of Guilfoyle Street may actually be a part of this property, which would make it even easier. So we are making substantial progress on that. I'm sorry,
That's abandonment for the streets.
Guilfoyle Street, right.
Yeah.
Now, you raised a question about off-street parking, or someone did. The site plan, the survey does have a site plan that shows where you could locate the various buildings. The village code, as you may know, in the last few years was somewhat liberalized as to where parking can be located. It can now be located in required front, side, or rear yards as long as it's set back at least 10 feet from a property line and as long as it's properly landscaped. So if you were to look on these site plans, you could see that there would be ample room for maybe even a 5 or 6 bedroom house. And obviously, when anyone comes in with an individual plot plan for development, he would have to satisfy the building department. So I just wanted to assure you that we have thought of that, and that shouldn't be an issue. There was a comment or a question raised about the comparison between a 10-lot standard subdivision and a 16-lot subdivision serviced by a chromoglass system. And I believe at one of our previous meetings, we submitted data which indicate that actually with the 16-lot division with a chromoglass system, I think the nitrogen is actually reduced by about 50% over what it would be if it were a 10-lot standard subdivision. So this could be a major plus. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And I think there's something already in the record on that when we were at the sketch plan and the secret stage. Now, as far as the next step is concerned, we would hope that given where we are and given where we've come, that we could at least schedule a public hearing. All these things can be further discussed and fleshed out during the course of the public hearing, and I would ask you, if it's possible tonight, to agree to schedule that with the understanding that there'll be more information to come. I don't think there's anything else unless you have any questions of me.
Any questions?
My only observation is I saw, because I was looking for it on the street skill, there was, I think I mentioned it to you too, there was a village action of some type in about 1981 or 2 on Guilfoyle Street. It was done, I believe, by 3 men who were on the, I think it might have been the ZBA,
I think you're right.
about Guilfoyle, and it was Hadrick and Jake Buckheit and I forget the third guy, the 3 sitting alone. And the action was that it would not become a public street that would connect to Moses Lane. That was the action. So in other words, I assumed it meant that the property owners using it, for instance, at the north end, had it as a street that would only come down from Prospect, and it would not connect, it would be a dead end. And that was my trigger for asking you if the developers could end up looking at 3, for all sorts of reasons of zoning and fire, 3 flag lot streets to come in to deal with the traffic and to reduce even further traffic on Moses Lane because of all the developments going to take place to the west. It will make Moses Lane a major feeder. And that's what led to it. But you might look at it, it might help this so-called abandonment problem because there was an action taken and maybe it makes your operation routine for us now to deal with what really is the water problem.
Whatever it is, we have to satisfy it. And I think, and
But I'm giving you those.
I
I
appreciate
know you
that.
do great work and you're thorough and your client, I'm sure, is too, but I give you those as the only stuff I've had the time to discover on that heading that might help the abandonment, but also deal with the whole issue of both traffic and this whole access problem for parking and where they are. And it may relate to the park problem too, for how's the rest of it used. Anything against the railroad tracks is an art form.
Right, that's true. It was, in fact, that case you refer, I think I maybe even handled that. My memory serves me, I think I handled
Might have been
30-some years ago.
toward your rookie years, that's right.
But I appreciate your comments, but we do hope that we can, and I'll certainly look into that, that may help us, but
Because the paper exists, it's somewhere in the just moved building department.
just have to remember what client it was, and I think I remember.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you. So if you could, my request would be that we schedule a public hearing, and then,
Mr. Flanagan, what is, you heard Mr. Cleary's points about the park situation. Is it the applicant's idea that the lands marked as park are satisfying the requirement? It was my understanding during the discussions prior to the SECR approval that he was in agreement that a park fee was going to be required.
we thought we would present this to you. I mean, if that's ultimately something you need to determine, and in the context of final approval, if you, in your wisdom, deem a park fee to be something, that's something you can certainly consider. But we are presenting, so we can show that we can set aside enough space that would meet the area requirements.
But I think we even discussed during the SECR that the land that's required to set back from the sanitary system can't be, didn't we do that, Aldo? It doesn't count.
And I think that if you take a piece of property and break it up into 9 pieces and spread it out all over, it's not, I don't think it really fits the definition of the park, but, and I thought we had talked about
We have, and that's. I don't
saying
think
we'll
that's
pay
a
the
problem.
park fee since the first meeting.
I don't think that's, ultimately, if that's what you decide, that's not going to stand in the way of the subdivision.
Okay.
And the other point Pat's memo makes is regarding the requirement for the submission of the preliminary drainage plans. I really feel for the public to have full disclosure, they should be able to know what the plan is. And I'm happy to suggest that we schedule the public hearing, but I'd like to know when you feel that plan will be available for the public to review and to comment on.
Okay, that I'm.
The drainage plan is
I think, you're talking about the SWIP? Yeah, okay, that's something
I
different.
would say 2 weeks, we'll have that submitted. That won't be a problem.
Well, that's good. If the public has 2 weeks to review it before the meeting, I don't think that's enough time. Take a look at it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the park plan is baloney.
Yeah. No, we'll go with the fee.
Streets that come in to cut the traffic. Get rid of intersections, that's right. That'll come up in that hearing.
Right. Told you it was a good memo.
Does July work?
July, that's what we're asking for. If you could schedule it, then we'll post and mail it.
You okay with that?
I am okay. Is anyone in the public, now that Mr. Flanagan, have anything to say regarding this application? If anyone wants to make a motion regarding the scheduling of the public hearing,
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for the next public meeting, which is July 7th.
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Good job.
No, it's Roy's the third.
The next application is Bishop's Grant, 333 North Main Street.
Good evening, board members. Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Marcinsigan and Bruin for the applicant. As indicated at your work session, happy to submit tonight a couple things. Number one, all the legal instruments. We had submitted drafts to your counsel. He's reviewed them. We have now all the executed documents, which the board can give one final look at, as well as the final Mylars and Health Department stamps. We had previously submitted and been reviewed the SWIP plan, which was a condition of final application. In addition, all the driveway plans, landscape plans have been approved. We believe that all the conditions of approval have now been met. The last item was the park fee. And based on memos that were in the file and the memo from your counsel as to the contract to sale, using that as the, and actually our closed, the purchase price for the closed property. We have a check here, cashier's check, made out to the Village of Southampton, $147,456. So with the submission of these items, we believe we're in a position to have the maps signed. I understand you will want your consultants and attorney to review this, but I think at this point, because the final conditional approval, the chairman or the secretary is authorized to sign the maps at any time. We would hope you would do that as soon as possible and not wait for another month.
And the check is good right now.
We've got 10 minutes to get to the bank.
Wayne, there's a note on the file that says you need an additional $650 for the SWIP application. Do you know if that's taken care of?
I think we got a call. I don't know if it was, but guess what? We'll have a check to the village tomorrow morning if it hasn't been. So.
I don't see it here, and
Okay.
it wouldn't be, they would keep it, so it just, that somebody attached
I
it to the file.
have to look at my file to make sure. I know
Okay.
my secretary got that call, and I'll just check to make sure. So.
Okay.
Here, you guys ready for it?
So I assume, Kathy will probably need just to take one last look at the maps, and Bo one last look at the legal documents, and I think, in your travels
Send
by,
this all
after
down.
Bo authorizes you to sign, you could sign, and we'll come to pick the documents and the map up to get them recorded.
And once Jackie lets me know that she's received the
And the
documents
check.
from Bo, I will
As well,
sign the
$650.
Mylars.
Great.
So you should have a resolution to authorize the chairman to sign the Mylars upon with the report of the consultant and counsel.
I make the motion that the chairman so be authorized.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just take one of them.
Oh, one last protocol question, and Kathy and I were trying to figure this out. I know in other municipalities, the driveway plans and the landscape plans that you approve along with the map, they don't get recorded in the county clerk's office. They sit in your file. They're referenced by date in the resolution, but one thing that would make it easier for everybody is whether or not you actually stamp them, and you need a certain number of copies. I know, like, for example, in the town, they do that, so that when you're going through the file, you see various plans and various revised dates. You eliminate all that confusion. You see one that's actually stamped. So that's the landscape plan, that's the driveway plan. I don't know if you do that here, but we can get you whatever number of copies you need, and we can do that if that's,
Yeah, it's an excellent
Program.
idea.
Yeah, I'll check with John Foster tomorrow to see if there's something that they've done in the past.
yeah. I know the town gets like 4 copies. They give one to the engineer's files. I don't know if it's that elaborate here, but I know that you could have at least one in your files and one for the applicant to have as a matter of record, at least 2. If you want more, then we can do that, but it would be good to just have that and have it stamped. That way there's no confusion. So I'll wait to hear if you guys need those as well.
Thank you. The application of OIA Associates, we've received a letter from the applicant requesting adjournment. At the work session, we discussed drafting a letter.
Yeah, I have not done that, but I will between now and the next meeting, because then we'd like to,
I'm just over the head.
for administrative purposes only, clarify this.
And in
Thought
the
we had-
meantime, there is a request for an adjournment.
What's that?
There is a request for an adjournment in the meantime until July 6th.
Right.
Till the next
Yeah.
one. Did we approve that at the work
We
session?
We
No,
approved it.
no.
I think didn't we approve it at the work
No, it
session
wasn't.
to
I didn't
adjourn it,
think
or?
so.
No,
Or we didn't, because we were gonna authorize
We
Bo to write the
approved
letter?
it for today. We approved today's,
We were gonna, yeah, we
Adjournment.
asked Bo to talk to the applicant to say, it's been a long time, Fisher cut bait.
Right. So, do we need a motion to authorize you, Bo,
oh, didn't.
on the record?
No, I've been authorized, I said I
Okay,
just
great.
haven't had a time to
Okay.
do that.
I think we need a motion
We
to
need a
adjourn
resolution to approve the applicant's
application.
request to adjourn
Okay.
until July 6th.
I'll make a motion at the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the OIA Associates 212 Windmill Lane until the July 7th meeting.
A
I'll
second?
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And similarly, for 550 and 554 Hill Street, there is a letter from the applicant requesting adjournment, which,
I think we adjourned, we did adjourn that one at the work session.
On that one, there's a letter,
Moved to July, yeah, we did.
but it was received after the 28th was after the work, oh, no, it was Wednesday. That's right, that's right, that's right. Okay, so we did that.
Yep.
We did that.
there's a,
So efficient.
Mr. Chairman, there's a nice May 28th letter from council about municipal activity, which has appeared. I didn't have that before. The matter that I brought up unartfully, Gil, in passing, had to do with not with either property. It had to do with reference to those two properties in front of the ARB some years ago, when I believe the applicant was getting permission to build a house on Captain's Neck Lane below the southern portion of these two properties. And I believe someone who was involved with the ARB matters then, as to the placement of the applicant's house, told me that they recollected matters brought up and discussed about the placement of the house with two issues involved. One was lights coming from South Hill Street, interfering with the placement of the house, which should be as far north as possible. The second matter being, it was not going as far north as possible for purposes of access to 550 and 554. Now, that may be hearsay, it may not have happened. It's just that if it was a matter taken up in that ARB matter, council told us we could we could foil it, which is a pain in the neck for everybody. If it's something routine for the applicant who should know all about it, what's it all about? It will clear up the matter, because it was of interest to the neighborhood, or what I'll call the Captain's Neck neighborhood. One of our judgments being, as I understand it, we have to keep an eye to the neighborhood in making decisions for changes. And therefore, it seemed to me it might be relevant where someone, and if
This
you,
was right to the south of this on Captain's Neck? Is that-
it had to do with the placement of a house on Captain's Neck between these two properties, where the question of where the house was, the matter raised in front of the Architectural Review Board, I was told.
Not between us.
Applicant said he was not going to position the house for application to these properties. Now we have an issue with that, which, of course, as we all know, and we discussed with you, the fire department is focused on, those issues of how wide it is, where it is, and to my investigation, the property falls off 6 feet or so from where it is to the next property. So if you're going to go in on anything there, a flag lot or a road or something, there's a serious drop-off at the south edge of that property that was before the Architectural Review Board concerning access to 550 and 554.
And this property was south of 550?
No, it was due west of 550. It connects 550 into Captain's Neck. It's a
Okay.
border property. The southernmost border property was, those matters were brought up publicly, and I was told in front of the ARB. If it's not the case, it's not the case. It will not come before us. It will not be brought up, I guess, by us as a neighborhood matter, but it was once, some time ago.
I'll certainly see what I can
Yes,
find out.
and this is a nice letter, but it had nothing to do with stuff that was on 550 or 550 had to do with access to it through that property.
Okay, see what I can find out.
Just along the same line, I've had this comment concerning its design as proposed, that it creates a highly undesirable situation where you have stacked lots that function like large flagpole or pipe stems with 4 lots, 3 of which don't have any frontage on a public street, such as Hill Street or Captain's Neck, and are being accessed through a driveway that goes through other lots, creating a situation, especially on such small lots as these half-acre lots as proposed, with some facing front backs, some facing sides, instead of fronts to fronts and back to backs. The prevailing development pattern in this neighborhood is that lots have frontage on public streets with fronts facing fronts across the street, backs facing backs, and sides. The most traditional and desirable development pattern suitable for the historic district that I believe encompasses these lots. That doesn't mean that you can't have a flagpole and have a lot on the street, and then you can have a flagpole and have a house behind the house that's on the street. Or you might even have a longer flagpole, and you could have 2 houses between the house on the street, but with sufficient room between the front and the back. And this property proposal doesn't have sufficient room for a beehive. I mean, it's breathtaking in its effort to egregiously capitalize on housing sites that have no relationship with the zoning code as existing and has been existing in that neighborhood for 45 years. It's a downzoning that has somehow or other fell the decision on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and some question in my mind legally, what and who is going to be responsible for this subdivision? The planning board or the Zoning Board of Appeals, which has accepted the plan as presented to us.
Since this was noted as adjourned on the record, should we be even talking about this unless it actually becomes part of a public hearing?
Got to get to a public hearing.
It's.
Because it's really not on the agenda as,
Unfortunately, Mr. Flanagan is here, but yes,
Oh.
it should be, the discussion is better postponed.
No, it should be.
Obviously, I didn't even bring a file with me to talk about it tonight because we
Right,
adjourned
right.
at the
It's-
work session.
this was adjourned at the work session, so.
Yes.
And by the way, just so you know, the Board of Appeals has not approved this yet. The Board of Appeals took it and referred it to you.
Referred it
That's
to
what
us.
started the CEQA
Right.
process.
That's
The
right.
Board of Appeals has not approved it yet.
That's right. And I just brought it up as a procedural matter. I didn't mean to get into discussion of the thing. It was a prior matter.
Moving on. Margaret H. Fowler, 550 and 560 Wickapog Road.
Okay, for the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street. We talked about this briefly at the work session. This is a proposed two-lot minor subdivision of a part of the Fowler Farm property. There was a question raised about the fact that the application shows it as 5 tax lots, and since the work session, I was able to get a copy of a deed which combines all of those tax lots into one, and I've submitted that. You should have that in the record. I also did make some copies of the Suffolk County tax map section that shows all of those lots circled. And if you compare that with the deed, you'll see that all tax lots are encompassed in that one deed. And it specifically makes reference to the fact that they're supposed to be treated as one lot.
Yep.
And as you'll also note that the lot that we're proposing to create where the house is doesn't bear any relationship to this tax lot, which is where the house actually is. But just for the record, I'll submit that if I could.
Thank you.
I also did a little investigation with the question of the agricultural assessment that this property enjoys. And as I suspected, it really has nothing to do with the subdivision, it has more to do with the use. In other words, you can have a subdivision of 5 lots, as long as they're farmed, that doesn't change the agricultural use. So it's really an apple and an orange. The only thing would matter is if the use is converted. So that shouldn't impede your proceeding with a subdivision. I would ask, as I did before, that
Kathy?
Kathy, you got one of these?
possible you schedule a public hearing on
Got
this
one more
one
for
also.
Bo? Thanks.
I got more if you need them.
Yeah, can I have one
Thank
more?
you.
Thanks. It's for you.
That's a nice piece of property, huh?
So my request is simple, and that is to schedule a public hearing on sketch plan.
You got a chance to look at the preliminary sketch plan and
Yeah.
you're okay to go to public hearing with it?
Yeah.
Make a motion at the request of the applicant to schedule a public hearing on the Margaret H. Fowler, 550, 560 Wickapog Road, and 35 and 83 Fowler Street to the July 7th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Gil, how did it come about that the lot where the house is was depicted as this one rectangular lot?
I have no idea. It may have been done by Rick Fowler, or maybe even by his father.
Yeah, accidents happen. The use did not conform to the ancient lots.
I don't know why there's a tax lot that's only about a foot wide that's located at the base
Yep.
of another tax lot. I can't explain that either.
And those 3 lots to the south, were they under a different deed?
I think they must have been.
Should we not check that?
I think they must have been. I know they've been around for quite a while.
Yeah, they
those lots.
have, but
Oh, yeah.
should we not check and make sure they're not part of this parcel?
I can do that if you want.
Well, if that's the case, then
Which ones are you referring to, Bo?
3 sort of
The ones at the
linear lots
bottom.
to the south of the rectangular square.
59, 16, and 58, 7, the ones at the bottom.
16, 17, and 18?
Yeah.
Yeah. This lot runs down, runs down to the pond, which is why, it's,
Right, that's why it's
Way it
angled
looks
off
like
like
it
that.
is.
That's exactly right, to match that division.
but these other ones up above with the
I
circles.
we
I
could
can
make
get you
that an
information.
official request, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
I can do that, that's no problem.
Site plan review. I believe we adjourned the Chabad.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure, very good.
And Crease Properties,
We're still awaiting.
Haven't got anything?
16 Windmill Lane.
Is this Crease?
Yes. Robert Conley, Fowler Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill. We did receive revised plans, but the revised plans need to be revised. So we're just asking for an adjournment to the July 6th meeting for all purposes.
What was
How
the
about July
nature of the
7th?
revision?
July 7.
July 7th? July 7th. The health department, the septic system may have to be rebuilt as is, so we're waiting for additional information from the health department.
Oh, okay.
Make a motion at the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Crease Property, 16 Windmill Lane, to the July 7th meeting.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's good.
Conic Land Trust, 296 Hampton Road.
What are we waiting for? That was Gil's parking.
That was my parking. Now, there were some comments made.
Handicaps and parking.
Comments made at a work session, particularly about parking, and the surveyors are looking at that now to see if we can address the access problems with 2 of the spaces that were mentioned, and also to provide you with the full-blown, landscape plan and lighting plan. So that's all still in the works. See if I have anything else here. Anything else? Oh. I think that's it.
I think that was it.
We're addressing those, we're in the process of addressing those issues.
We should have that by July, right?
I don't know that you could schedule a public hearing for this yet, because I don't know that I'll have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we need to get a survey
you probably
that's
wanna look at it.
correct first, yeah, so.
The parking Yeah, we're
So we'll adjourn till July to
Adjourn
see
where
if we
you're
can
at.
get the parking
yeah, adjourn
in
to
order.
where we're at.
Make a motion at request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Peconic Land Trust 296 Hampton Road to the July 7th meeting.
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Antoinette, it's to approve the request of the
I have
applicant.
that.
Thanks.
Southampton Town Newspapers, 135 Windmill Lane.
Okay, last but not least, there were some comments about a couple of things that needed to be added to the short environmental assessment form. We've since gotten that information, so I'll give you some copies of that for the record. We've filled in the items that were missing. And I actually re-signed it, I redated it. when I
Okay.
filled it in.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. Oh, Gil, you left this on the table last week. I don't know
Yeah,
if
thanks.
you wanted that. You were all leaving and I saw it sitting, so.
Okay, thank you. We're still working on the landscaping and the lighting plan, and also any questions about grading.
You want this?
No, he has one. That's for you.
I gave him one.
He has one. That's on this one.
Yeah.
So we had a question about, one of the parking spaces is included as a truck space?
On this one?
Yes.
I don't know that building, let's see, let me get that.
And that's not typical for a required
Yeah.
parking space.
Right, they're going to actually be coming down and going into the basement. That's not a parking space.
Okay.
It's not.
No, that's not a parking space. No, it's,
Okay.
counted in it.
So they're counting it in.
Let me see.
Exactly. Total parking spaces provided. There's 48 required and they're proposing 48, although we only found 47.
I'll take a, see if their addition works. I'll see if their addition works.
Good counting.
I don't know that this building, I think that building may not even require a truck space, but I'll take a look at it.
Yeah,
I'll take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Because we can add another
Ink truck.
space.
The ink truck has to park there. I love the barrels.
Was a property line survey submitted in the pre-app for this?
The property line survey,
Just a as-built survey?
I'm not sure.
Of the existing buildings?
Yeah.
Is it just one on site, or is it
It's
two?
one of the things that we asked for. I didn't have a survey.
If not, I can easily get you one.
Okay.
So on this, I guess, again, I request an adjournment for all purposes to give us time to submit that information.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Southampton Town Newspapers 135 Windmill Lane to the July 7th meeting.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a pending decision for Skyfall Barnhart.
File contains a resolution approving the application for the flagpole. An affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve
Did you get
the
that?
application as amended.
I don't think I got
I
one.
make the motion, I got it here, it spells my name wrong, but I say yes, I make the motion.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that concludes the order of business except for minute approvals. I'd love to get the April 27th and May 4th done. Sure.
I think I was, it's way, had nothing to do with you or anything. I listened to Steve handling the hearings that came up for the Citarella. Didn't that come before you? I think you might have managed that hearing and everything. I forget why I came. Somebody told me I had to come and listen to it. And I got the Citarella's changing use. Does that matter come back before this board or not?
I don't know.
How is it a change of use?
They want to enlarge the use of the space to become a liquor store as well.
I don't know if they're enlarging it. I think they're cordoning off a
They're
section.
gonna
They're
do the
changed.
back into a liquor store, separate
But that's-
business.
That's.
It's still retail
Still
sales.
retail use.
Okay, I didn't know
Doesn't
whether
come
it came
here,
before the
Well, I don't
board
think
or
so.
not.
I don't think so.
It would not if I don't see it as anything but a retail use, Alan.
Okay, that's fine.
They never
That's why I
expanded,
asked.
they never expanded the exterior of the building to begin with.
They're gonna use the back of it as a new company to sell liquor, is
Yeah.
what I hear. I don't know.
Well, you could have, I
They
think,
have
you
a lot
know,
of
you-
applications.
you can have a use, I think you need like 700 square feet for a use in the village. You could have probably
That's fine.
15 uses in that building.
So it doesn't come before this board, that's
Will not,
fine. I
unless
was
they
hoping it wouldn't.
unless they do something to the outside.
That's another issue.
The liquor store doesn't show up here.
Excuse me?
The liquor store.
No, it won't.
I mean, if they changed it to a bar, they'd have to come before.
There you go.
Sure.
But that's a change of use.
That's a change of use, but retail is village business.
So let's at least see if we can approve April 7th and May 4th. I would love to do that if everybody's read them in.
I have also Kathleen Center and revisions over on May 27th, which I think will address your concerns. I don't know if you've seen them.
I haven't, I'm not ready for May 27th. I just want to do the May 4th and April 27th if we can.
I'll move the approval of the minutes of April 27th and May 4th, and I'll do 27th too, because they were fine.
I haven't read those,
I'd like
but
to
there's a
look at
revised
27th.
one, and I wasn't here on May 4th, so I can only do the 27th at this point, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Yeah,
Aye.
Now
I'll
we
make the
need-
motion to approve the minutes of the 4th without Steve.
And me.
And
Was that
And
me
you, too, it's just three of us, that's
Right.
right. So it's Warren and you and me. I say, I make the motion.
Is Warren a second?
you have to second.
I've already seconded it.
He
All
has
in
a-
favor? Aye.
Aye. No, we
I was
can't-
about to
we can't vote.
congratulate the chairman on the efficiency of this meeting, which has lasted exactly less than 1 hour.
Oh, I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
Make sure it stays
I
there.
would like to just let
Oh, wait.
everybody know on the television that the next meeting is June 29th. It's a work session. And the regularly scheduled meeting that would be held July 6th is now going to be held July 7th. So, everybody at home, tune in then.
And I will re-motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.